All right, time for some driving and wisdom with James. Now, I just started to think about it. My wife and I are going off to a little, nice little area. Maybe I'll post some videos if you guys are lucky about it for our host. A little bit late, but 17th anniversary. And I came off grid to do a few little odds and ends. So I took off a day from the corporate grind. What's interesting is I was thinking about this. I was driving through an old dirt road field, and it kind of occurred to me, just over 30 years ago, I worked there. I was between my junior and senior year in high school. So I graduated in 96. Had to think about that for a minute. So just over 30 years ago would have been my technically first job, at least paid by someone else, working in this guy's chicken houses, which was no fun, and hauling hay. Well, one thing that I do think is unique, and it makes me special. No, it doesn't. But I do think it's kind of unique, because if you said, hey, how many people have hauled hay, worked on a farm? Okay, you've got X percent. Okay, how many people have worked in Wall Street or worked at the biggest corporation in the world in Manhattan? Okay, well, there's another percent. But once you say who has done both, I bet that percentage has got to be almost nil. Well, and that technically would be me. So, in other words, all I'm saying is I think it gives me a little bit of a unique perspective, because I have some people, blue collar, that's like, oh, James doesn't get it. And then I have the white collar. James doesn't get it. No, I think I do on both ends. Now, I will admit, I'm not, Mr. Gordon Gekko, even though I worked with some from the movie Wall Street. And I'm also not, trying to pretend that I'm Mr. Farmer. But I do think it's actually a real advantage and a real blessing to do both. That's why I tell people I think it's a real blessing to live in a big city, but also to live out in the sticks, out in the very small area. I think both of them have a lot to teach us, to be honest. And with that being said, we'll see how this early retirement journey goes, but I do think if somebody says, hey, I have a question on minimalism, like I want to spend less, okay, I can probably help you out there. At the same time, when people usually talk trash about the FIRE movement, the financially independent retire early, it's usually kind of a false dichotomy. And again, interesting, but my background, even though I haven't used it in my job, I have used it in extracurricular activities and writing and stuff, is my background's in philosophy with a master's in ancient and classical history. So it's like an encyclopedia of worthless knowledge. But with that being said, I can kind of see both sides of the pendulum, you might say. And make sure I'm not running over these creepy buzzards. It's weird. Anyway, what was I saying? Rambling. No, I do think, though, it's a false dichotomy. That's a philosophical term. It's in other words, it's a misrepresentation of the FIRE movement. When I hear people say, oh, it's bad, this is why I got out of the FIRE movement, and they will say something like, okay, I'm living on ramen noodles, I'm not enjoying life, I'm not doing anything, and I'm saving every penny just to retire early, and I am quitting that. Well, no kidding. I would have never started that to begin with. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a little bit frugal, but you don't want to not enjoy life. And what I mean by that is the apologetics, the coffee shop, the first one and the second one. Okay, I've probably, my wife ran it, but I've probably dropped in 30 grand of those that never got back. That's fine. That's 30,000. Keep going. Okay. I bet I've dropped 50 grand into the Biblical History Museum there at the Passion Play in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Of course, I'm not going to get that money back. I don't want it back. It served a greater purpose. Travel. Okay, we might not have been staying at the Ritz-Carlton or whatever's fanciest, but we never stayed in like the ghettos, and we've traveled a lot. Maybe it's a relative term. Some people say, no, you haven't traveled enough. Fine, whatever. We've been to 15 countries. I think I've said that before. My wife has been to China and Mexico. I have not been to those, but I have been to Honduras and sorry, car turning. And Japan. But we've both been to 15 countries, and some of them, like Italy, more than once. Fine. And what I mean by that is not to say, yeah, look at me, or, you know, oh my gosh, that's nothing. You haven't traveled enough. Fine, whatever. My point being is, I've not been living on ramen noodles, and I've not been not spending money and enjoying life. And I make okay money, but I don't make like tons of money. So, and I still am planning on financial independent retire early, at the age of 48. Now, I think most people would say, yeah, 48's early. And of course, I'm not actually going to be, you know, retiring like sitting at a golf course or something, or sitting on the beach. I'm going to be just doing something outside of corporate, right? And my point being with all that is to simply say, you don't have to starve yourself. You don't have to work till you're 80. There's a good meet in the middle. And I hope that that is kind of what, if anything, this little quote-unquote journey encourages other people, is to just think outside the box. And I think that if somebody says, yeah, I know your type, you never did anything and you've been saving up your whole life, that's false. I disagree with that. Oh yeah, you didn't. Well, then you can't make it work. You can't retire at 48. False. I think I will. In my own unique way. Well, in other words, do all the wells you want. You have no excuse. If you want to just randomly get yourself in debt and work until you're 70 or until you die, I mean, go for it. But I'm just telling you, everybody that says, yeah, but, yeah, if, yeah, you don't understand. I think I do. I don't care if you're a plumber or if you're on Wall Street. You can get out of the matrix early if you want. That's really all I had to say. I will actually show you this little field that I worked in over 30 years ago. Just for the people that's like, yeah, right. But seriously, you make your own bed, you're gonna sleep in it. So stop with the excuses. Have a good day. What's funny is literally this field, 31. No, it's 30. Just over 30 years ago. My first job working for this guy, hauling hay. And working in his chicken house. Off pits, super old house. He was well into his 90s. We used to always come here to visit. He gave us a Three Musketeers. His brother, Doc and Ethel. Pretty nice house, really. I think it's some nice farm equipment. Anyway, what's funny about all that is, well, just over 30 years ago, a third of a century, just sounds weird saying it, I was out here. They weren't circular bells, they were all square bells then. Following behind a tractor and a trailer and throwing them up on that And then longer ago than that, probably closer to 40 years ago, it was very common to just go visit your neighbors. At the time, I remember I dreaded it. And you know, Oth, you're talking about somebody born, I think he was born 1899, so pretty old dude. And then he died in the early 90s, so he was in his 90s when he died. But just a different lifestyle. And he would always fish out a Three Musketeers, which was like one of my least favorite candy bars. But I was like, oh, thanks. And I don't know, it's just normal back then, right? I don't know any of my neighbors now. And no offense, I don't really want to. But, I don't know, things have changed. Not all for the good, I guess. But now, looking back, I do kind of wish, man, to be able to spend an evening just talking to somebody born in 1899, yeah, be worth its weight in gold, you know? Oh well, what's on Netflix? What sports are playing? The more important stuff. As our healthy world continues to, you know, shoot people.